Okay, last time I did a lecture, it wasn't really a lecture, it was just going over one of the games, and mostly what I do is just do a lot of simultaneous exhibitions, so this is also quite unusual for me. However, I can recall an episode when I was like 10 or 9 years old, and there was a Kasparov World Championship match in progress in Leningrad, and I was just an upcoming talented kid, and one of the journalists in the press center, he noticed that all the commentators, they were going out for lunch, and they said, okay, you're a young kid, why don't you go out to the board and try to comment on the current game? And I had to do it in English also, so I was around 10, so I thought, okay, that was an interesting experience. I haven't done much since then, but today, because we're here at the ACP Classics, I thought it was, how to say this, relevant to go back to one of my World Championship games in '96 against Anatoly Karpov. We played the match with the Germans, and what I'm going to show you is the game where we actually had an adjournment which came out to be almost decisive in our match. So, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask me at any time, and we are going to start. Okay. I'm going to show you the game. It was the 13th game of the match. Anatoly was winning with a score of +3. He basically killed me in the first 7 games or 8 games because I had absolutely no experience and he had this huge match experience. And he tried to, he did a good job killing me. Okay, so in this game I'm playing black. And we continue our discussion in the Queensing and some of you will probably recognize the lines. And
did you say the number of the game, Gata?
It was the 13th game. Okay, so basically this was a topical theory back in the day. The idea is to hinder, of course, the white's development. So, in the standard Catalan fashion, white plays this, and black goes back to E7. So, normal development, and of course, I like to play Slav defense. So, Queen's Indian in this line is very similar to Slav defense. And of course, that's the key point. White has to develop something on C3, and usually it was a bishop, because then knight goes to D2, and bishop is back in the diagonal. So, and the knight 5 idea is basically to try to, because black is going to develop on D7 anyway, and this knight will have no squares. The idea is to hinder the development of that knight and open the bishop first. So, knight of D7, take. And here we came up with the novel idea at the time. The idea is, I played this one. Usually the main line went like this, rook c8, and the other main lines they included b5. So the idea behind this move was that in many lines, after black plays b5, white allows to take on c4, then the rook is here sitting doing nothing. And for the rook b8, it makes more sense to be on the open line. Also prepare something like bishop e4, because this bishop controls a lot of dark squares. So after eliminating this bishop, black will have an opportunity to develop his queen on the dark squares also. So that was the idea behind rook e8. And I remember Anatoly was thinking for a long time, and of course he's a very cautious player. So he was thinking what to do. And he just simply decided to move the bishop back out of the way. And prepare, of course, for a C-line invasion. So I had to play b5 once I played rook b8, and he closed the center. So it doesn't make sense to play b4 here because after a3 it will open, then the weakness on a7 will happen. So black had to follow up with e5. And of course now we have a strategic position. White has to take, otherwise there's no sense in doing anything. We have an interesting strategical position here. On one hand, white have this double pawns, but of course, since the pawns is in the center, it controls all the squares, so it's really important. White has nice development, bishops on the main diagonals. Black's bishop on a6 is kind of dumb, but bishop on a7 is nice. So in terms of space in the center, as you know, fighting for the center is one of the key strategic concepts in chess, because whoever who controls the center, he controls more opportunities at the board. And right now in the center there is a sort of tension. Since black has no double pawns, he wants to put the knight on e6 and start pushing his pawns, of course. So white's idea will be to try to prevent that, and also use his own pawn majority here to try to develop sort of an attack. But it won't be easy. So the idea for white is to stop the advance of the black pawns. How to do that? So Anatoly came up with just a simple move a3. And basically he just wants to block everything on the dark squares. And or at the very least, simply to just join black pawns. After prevent c5, play b4, and if c5 then takes, and this will be an isolated pawn. And because this pawn is alone in the center and white will have pressure, white will be much better. So I had to admit, he really well met our opening idea, and I was really impressed. So the question is now what to do with this bishop, because I cannot play b4. It will leave everything hanging, and I have to put the bishop somewhere. I put the bishop on b7 because it's a safe spot. It's also protecting, and of course I'm looking forward to d4, c5, and maybe exchanging the bishop. However, it's not quite so easy, because whenever I play something like knight e6, it will just fall under the advance of the f1. And then, of course, once the pawn gets to f6, it will open my king, and then the black will be really in trouble. So I had to think of something, and knight a4, a tempo. So he attacks me, I counter-attack him, so it's like a war of the tempos. Dr. Tarrasch always said that the knight on the ring is a bad piece, which is like a basic canon in chess. But in this particular situation, we can also note from the Queen's Gambit, Carlsbad variations, sometimes black puts the structure like this, and then the idea is to put the knight on c4, sort of, annulling the weaknesses of the position. And white can give up the bishop, of course, a5. So, the position drastically changed. Now white has a block on the queen side, but at the same point this pawn is kind of weak. So white doesn't have really time to use this for his advantage. So Anatoly played queen b3. Nice move, protecting everything. Also queen eyes here. And I played queen, following the plan, putting the knight on c4. So here we repeat it once to win time, because even if you have a lot of time, when you're meeting a new position for the first time and you're not sure what to do, you spend a lot of time even for all these things. So here, also the second purpose of repeating the position is always to check the intentions of your opponent. Does he want to play for a win, or he's ready to repeat? It's a nice psychological weapon in a way. Okay, so centralizing the piece, eyeing the X-ray, knight c4, and again, as you can see now, the knight is a really pretty piece. It eyes a lot of things at the board. And now white has to decide what to do with this knight. So that's why the master strategist decides to put the knight of his own on c5, because that's an obvious hole in the black's position. And the rook goes back to the open A line. It will be open to contest it. Knight e3 moves along the plan, and queen has to find a home also to avoid the potential e4 and all the attacks. At the same time, also eyeing this pawn. The second idea behind this move is also sometimes when white plays knight c5, which he did in this case, black will be able to take here, and then of course bishop cannot take because pawn falls, but which results in white taking with the pawn, and then black will have a pass pawn here. But at the moment I cannot do it, and also black is kind of cramped, as you can see. It's very tough to find any plan, white for white.
May I say something?
Yes.
When you take on c5,
Yes.
the bishop takes the rook.
Yes, but I mean, eventually, it's one of the ideas. I'm just showing you the ideas of the position so you can be clear on what's going on in general here. Usually what black also does is sometimes puts the pressure on this pawn and tries to undermine it with f6. But in this case, it won't be so simple. Just to give you a general idea, I'm not talking about the forks or anything, just positional mechanics. In this case, white will play e4, and then will force the exchange here. And in this case, you can see clearly the difference between the bishops, this one and this one, plus the weakness, of course. So that's what white wants. He wants to play e4 to get this kind of a position. The second plan, of course, is, once he blocked the queen side, is to start pushing the pawns here, g4, f4, f5, and then eventually create threats to the king. So black is actually forced to do something here. And as you mentioned, I cannot take on c5 right now because bishop attacks the rook. I have to move the rook. First I have to put the bishop on c8 to take control over the e6, f5 squares, plus putting the bishop on a more useful spot. And of course, the second idea, if he wants to play something like e4 here, then it means that the bishop can always come out this way and hit the rook from this side, trying to provoke f3, because any movement from the king will still weaken white's king position. And of course, in case of e4, black can just play bishop e6 in a way, because this is a great knight. He doesn't want to take here. This loves the bishop, right? So what Anatoly did, he solved this, of course. So he played h3, a nice prophylactics, a move to the king, taking the square g4 from the bishop. And he's also ready to meet any bishop f5 with g4. Moves like this, and they identify a great positional player, of course. So, I have to play rook d8 to move the rook out of the way. And now, white was also, it's not so simple for white to play as well. Because if he plays f4 too early, then I can probably just take here and move the bishop on the light squares here. Because now the bishop has a new home on e4. So, and white is prevented from playing e4 himself. So it's not so simple because so, I mean, the position can look really like nothing special, but at the same time it can hold a lot of hidden intricacies. And it will just play g4 for that same reason, to prevent the bishop come to f5. And of course, what to do? And we just spoke about it earlier. I decided to take on b4 first, because if I take on c5 immediately, white takes with the pawn, this pawn will not be passed on. So it was necessary to take here first. I give him a line, but and take on c5. So if he takes, of course, I take on e4. So here's a change in the position. White now has two bishops. It has a beautiful, beautiful bishop on d4. And it seems he has everything under control. However, despite the fact that the black's position is kind of passive, he has trumps of his own. Knight is strong. Bishop has no moves, but this is for now. There is a long-term positional possibility of the pass pawn. And any idea of now playing e4 creates a risk, because suddenly this beautiful bishop can be under attack. It could be something like h5 here, then queen d7, and there is also no attack for white. So, but if white doesn't play e4, what is he going to do with this bishop? Because his bishop is also closed. Okay, but in the meantime, white controls the line, and the chess laws, they say that whoever controls the only open line has an advantage. So in this case, that's one of the reasons why I played bishop d7. My idea is, the bishop is stupid, but the main idea is to put the rook, to exchange the pair of rooks, and then the factor of the passed pawn will be much higher, of course, because white will always have to control it. So, Anatoly was short of time, and he decided to play some general moves, like strengthening his position and improving his bad bishop now. So he wants to put the bishop here, on this diagonal. It will be also controlling the square of the promotion. It will be controlling the square of 5 and looking at my king. Multi-purpose move. So each one of us goes according to his own plan. And he plays bishop f1. And now I'm following my plan. I just want to get into the endgame, where I will have a passed pawn, which will give me counterplay at the very least. And for that reason, of course, I have to exchange queens, because his queen was way more active. So it took, and suddenly black's position doesn't look so bad anymore.
No. No.
Are there
Something
other
must have
ways to
gone horribly
exchange?
wrong.
What?
Are there other ways to exchange? First bishop or something, isn't that possible?
Yes, but see, optically, white thinks that because he has two bishops,
Oh, okay.
he is still better. He's not thinking about it in terms of whether he is worse. He still thinks he's better.
But also, if he gives away the bishop, he's going to be worse, and that's it.
That's
Yes. So I mean, still, if you look at any endgame, two bishops are considered to be a stronger piece than the knight and the bishop always. But the whole point is that the pawns are on the white squares, and he has more space, but there is no way for him to get there. Plus, this is still a semi-closed position, and in this position, the knight is a good piece, of course. And I have a pass pawn. So at this point, I was really optimistic, and he was short of time. He was thinking he's still better, but as a black, I'm already realizing, that it's time to play for a win. And looking at his clock, I was really happy. And he continues to play his normal moves. And of course, right before the Zate knot, it's important to create some pressure on the opponent. This is one of those moves before he realizes what's wrong and puts the bishop here somewhere. Okay, so he does what everybody thinks is right, expanding two bishops. Knight c4 with the idea of, getting the bishop into the game. And defense. And of course now there is no point in putting the bishop because he's simply going to hit the pawn. So what I'm going to do, I was also getting short on time, because white still wants to expand here, create some sort of a pass pawn, which will be dangerous. So I played bishop c8 here first. Also one of the threats, potential threats is, to undermine the pawn structure and try to get some blockade on the white square, some g6 f5 or something. Potential, I'm not saying. And also the bishop will be better placed on d7, protecting and controlling this diagonal. There is no way for white to get to this pawn right now. Because, okay, so king f2, normal moves, right? Ah, sorry. He played f5. Again, expansion. So basically white wants just to get his king here, play e4, force black to exchange, and then create some sort of weakness and open up the position for his bishops. But, sorry, knight e2. Just controlling the square. I mean, we played this in '96 with no computers back then. I mean, they were like, but they were really weak. I used to beat the computer even the 3-minute chess. Maybe some of you will remember like programs named Chess Genius or something like that. We were using those. And, you know, looking at the game after many years, I realized, you know, we still played really decent chess. I mean, because people use general principles and they use the understanding. And oftentimes the computers, they still don't get it. Okay, g6. The start of the undermining process. If bishop goes to c2, knight can always cut him off with knight e4, and then white will have to resolve the structure anyway. So he uses tactics to get king to f4 to protect the pawn while that pawn is hanging. And I had to bring the king here just in case to protect my own squares to get the promotion control. So king is 7. And in this position, the computer evaluates it as about points 12, 13, which is basically even position. But a little bit better for black, because again, white has no plan. Black cannot move anything because he'll be hit, but again, white was thinking he's better. He has to win, and that was his problem. Now, you know, he achieved everything he ever wanted. You know, he got the active king, he got the center, he got the expansion, he got the bishops. And the question is, if you want to win this position, how are you going to win this? And he thought that by the sacrifice, he might get the pass pawn of his own, protected, and then get his king into that way. And that's what he did. Of course, it was a miscalculation since he realized king d5 can be met by knight c4 check. And so suddenly he started playing for a draw. You know, everybody goes back, take away the squares. And now I have set him up a nice trap. g5. And I still remember, I mean, it was back in '96, almost 20 years ago. I still remember how he was, at this point he had like about a minute left or something. I'm not sure we used the Fisher clock at that time, but probably we did. And he was just about to take this pawn. And of course you cannot take this pawn. He played this. But you cannot take this pawn. Because this bishop, he holds the pawn. So it is important to do. Yes, but that's the whole point, if you don't see it. Anybody who plays French will realize that this bishop will be exchanged with this maneuver. And then, while white king goes after this pawn, black will go after this pawn. And he will be right behind the white king, so that means white is lost. He's a pawn down too. So, and I think Anatolius didn't say it because he was really scared, but his intuition served him well. Okay, where are we here? But it was not geometrical motive. So he played king g3. Basically, he realized that all he has to do is forced me to exchange this knight for this bishop, and then because of this pawn, king is always stuck protecting the square. And white has only really to play just one move here to completely cement the position and start chasing my knight to exchange him and then make a draw. And this was actually move number 49. I'm not sure why, I don't remember the time control, but I remember this time he was short of time. Maybe it was time for the second time control or something. So, how do I prevent that and get actually here? So I played b2, and knight d3. I wanted to dislocate the bishop from the square, and at the cost of my powerful pawn, but now I want to get one of those. And this was, of course, an easy move, followed by bishop c2, but he was so nervous, or he saw a very interesting idea. What he did, he played this, okay? Oops, sorry, and d4. I mean, this game featured a lot of pawn movements, a lot of changing in structure. And this was, to me, because I'm a classical raised chess player, to me it was really interesting, all these perturbations. And now he has this fantastic, he sacrificed one pawn and he just gives another pawn. Only to, disjoin, to crush the black structure. And if you ask the computer will tell you that black has a huge advantage, like -1 something. In practical terms, it's really difficult. And after I took here, I can say it was a draw, because I have a lot of pawns, but there is no win. So the only question was if this move was the better try. The idea is to put the bishop on the line to work, and put the knight on d7, hitting the pawn on f6 to work. And of course, white has a lot of move here. If you take, then take, knight goes to f6 and it's winning, of course. But the problem is if he plays e5, because again, white wants to transfer the game to the opposite color bishop's endgame. So bishop a6. And the idea, of course, is to put the knight here and push the pawns here. So white has some interesting ideas like bishop a3. So he can put the bishop on the more active spot than here. And if c5, then of course bishop can hit the knight also. So if you want to prevent that, you have to play bishop e5. And king can just come like here, and this was a critical position. I think that's the only time where I had some real chances, to try to win the game. But I'm not going to go into different lines because I don't quite remember them. But after looking at this position for a while, white has very good defensive resources. It's not so simple. Because the moment you push your pawn, the king blocks it, and then very tough to move the knight, especially with this strong pawn here. In a lot of positions, what you get is something like, how to say this? Okay, black gives up these 2 pawns. Okay, I can just show in general what I can get. And we get something like this. And this is extremely interesting, of course, because you get the pawn here somewhere, but of course it's still a draw. Okay, we're going too far. So, but during the game, of course, it's difficult when somebody offers you material and you have no idea why. You just decide to take it just to be cautious enough. And that's what I did. And I thought, I'm going to win this pawn anyway, because my knight is going to come and pick up this pawn as well. Here, should be 4, and c5. So, we're still playing. This is still the first game. And it seems that after I take this pawn, I'll have 2 extra pawns. But now, the true power of 2 bishops comes into play. I mean, you can basically afford just to stand around. I thought that I can improve my bishop first, before getting this pawn. So, and he just shuffled around. I improved my bishop sort of, but bishop c4, and I want to put him on the center. So he annoys me with his attacks here, bishop d5 and bishop e2. Right, and this was another critical moment. I mean, black improved his position to the maximum. He got centralized bishop, got centralized knight. And one of the interesting moves here to play for win was c4. And I'll just use the bishop. And the idea is to put the knight here, under the protection of the knight, put the pawn here, take, and just, come out. But it's not so simple, because, okay, either king d3 or bishop b2. And the idea is if you play something like this, you can simply play king e3 with e5, and just bishop f3 or something like that. Because if you take, give me a second, try to remember. So c4. Because when I look at home, I look from the black side, from the position that I play, and it looks different, of course. So,
take the pawn on e5 and then play king d4.
what?
Take the pawn on e5 and play king d4.
Yeah. I'm trying just to remember how it was. Well, definitely bishop e2 because he hits the pawn. If you play bishop c1, there is this trick, and black is like being really happy, and this is a mistake, of course, because now you can never get rid of this pin. However, black will just simply play king g6, and he will delay taking the pawn until the knight moves at least. That's one interesting consideration. Okay, but bishop e2, knight c6. I'm just trying to remember what one of the defensive major reasons was because he put the bishop on f3. Or maybe even here. And to prevent e5 from coming. Okay, let's try to think strategically here. So if I play king e3, e5, bishop f3, he's taking. Take king f6. Ah, yeah, okay. King e4. Right, you were right. And black has 2 extra pawns, but surprisingly, there is no win. Because everything is controlled. This pawn is weak, and if I play king e6, he just attacks this pawn. And it's a draw. So, what can you do? I mean, it's amazing, really. So that's the reason why c4 didn't work. play it safe. Here. Yes. And king e3. And around this point we adjourn our game finally. So the question was, of course, I had 2 seconds with me in the match. It was Predrag Nikolic and Luke Van and Karpov had God knows how many helpers, of course. And of course our major concern, when I was playing this game, I remember I felt really happy because with black, I put Anatole in the defensive, I'm 2 pawns up in the endgame, and it's adjourned, it's great, I mean, come on, it's just easy win. Just you guys analyze this and find me the win, And then I went to sleep. And the next morning, before the adjournments, I wake up, and the guys tell me, it's a draw. So, I was a little bit upset. Okay. And we couldn't decide on the plan because they told me to draw everywhere. There's no way for black to improve the position. And we didn't decide on the plan. So when I came to the game, I was really upset still. And I was trying to think of something. I was burning a lot of time, and of course I couldn't find anything. And what happened is psychologically, you just sort of give up, and I played the lousy moves. So what I didn't realize about this position was that white wants to put the bishop here. This is the best spot for the bishop because he controls this whole line. He prevents this, and this is the best place, simply. What I couldn't have played is tried something like this. Because, okay, let me elaborate. Black gets this pawn anyway. And then the question is, what structure he wants to play? He wants to play this structure with these 2 pawns, or you can get this structure. You get 2 extra pawns, but because they're too damn close, it means all the opposite color bishop endgames they're drawn. It doesn't matter whether it's these pawns or it's these pawns. It's just draw. So, the only way to play for win is to try to keep the knight on the board, or have these pawns in a more advanced stage, because then it gives you chances. And this was one of the best moves for that reason, because if I try something like this, what black wants to do is he wants to keep the knight here, and okay, because now knight just takes and hits on the check, and then e4 moves. Ideally, black wants to get this position, because then he is winning. The king protects both pawns, and the knight goes to e6, it's just winning. But I couldn't get that position, that's the problem. Anyway, so I played this, and just wanted to show you the move that I missed. It seems white has a lot of moves, but there are a lot of Zug's ones also, because if the bishop moves somewhere, black gets the vital tempo to get to the place. So he played king e2. King here protects the bishop, which is important. In a lot of lines, knight goes with tempo here or tempo here. And this position now. And the moment white here, so he can leave the spot open for the bishop to hit my pawn if I want to move my king. If e5, then bishop f5, of course, it just transfers. So I sort of made a useful move. I got his pawn. But in the end, it doesn't matter, because as soon as I move my king, and I don't have the square anymore because of the bishop, he just hits this pawn. And if I go back, he goes back. And if I move my bishop, then he attacks my knight and gets the pawn anyway. So this is the positional draw. So what I had to do, I decided to, just be practical and exchange the pawns. So I have 2 pawns, but this is a draw because his king is also near, and he just plays on the black squares. That's why his bishop is strong. And we played for some moves, and it's still a draw. But the effect of this game was terrible because, you know, I felt that I had this great opportunity. I was -3 in the match, I was playing with black. If I had won this game, then, you know, he would be in shock for the next game, and I would be white. It's possible that I could win. And that would have meant I would be like +1, and then we would have 5 more games, I would have a fighting chance. After this draw, you know, if you have 2 extra pawns, you know, you can win the game. This is really depressing. So the next game I played, it was with white, I lost. It was no fight. That was when the match was over. And I felt strongly that during the game he was making horrible moves, you know, he allowed me to get 2 extra pawns. And I felt that if there was no adjournment, there was a big possibility that I would have won this game. But at the adjournment he came, he was completely different man, of course. You know, he knew what to do, he knew it was a draw, it was a quick draw. And that was the result of the adjournment of my career.
And then you stop.
Yeah, then I stopped, but okay, that's completely different. It's nothing to do with it. So, many years later, when Emil came to me and told me, "Hi Gata, we're thinking about making a tournament with the old time control with the Germans. Would you like to play?" And I remember this game.
You said no.
And I said, you know, to hell with it, okay, let's play. Because after all, you know, it's not just about you. Chess is about everything. I mean, when you play time control like this, you remember the games from 2 centuries ago when the old grand masters like Rubinstein and Capablanca and Lasker, they were playing on the old clocks. They were playing simple time controls, thinking. You know, I think it's a great tradition still. You know, you feel yourself a bit closer, you feel like you're part of it. So it's nice to play again, something like that. And when you play feeder control, rapid chess, this is more about sport. And when you play with this time control, you remember all those times and you feel yourself less of a sport and you think of yourself more as intellectual.